Good evening, everybody. It's 7 o'clock on Monday, May 15th, 2023, and we will call this meeting of the Sault Ste. Marie City Commission to order. If we could have a roll call, please.
Mayor Gary.
Here.
Commissioner Bauer.
Here.
Commissioner Bospis Rath. Commissioner Habusta.
Here.
Commissioner Marble.
Here.
Commissioner Miller.
Here.
Commissioner Rubenstein.
Here.
Commissioner Bospis Rath did call and say she was not able to make it this evening, so we need a motion to excuse if you so see fit.
So moved. Support.
It's been moved and supported. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? If everybody would please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Good? No? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much. Number 4, mayor comments and general announcements. Today is Monday, May 15th, and it is Peace Officers Memorial Day and Police Week, the beginning of Police Week. This is an observance in the United States that pays tribute to the local, state, and federal peace officers who have died or who have been disabled in the line of duty, and it's celebrated on May 15th of each year. The holiday was created on October 1st, 1961, when Congress authorized the President to designate May 15th to honor peace officers. President John F. Kennedy signed the bill into law October 1st, 1962. We will move on into item B, proclamations and recognitions. We have none this evening, so we'll move on into item C, which is public comment. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to make any comments on any of our scheduled agenda items? We do have quite a few hearings, public hearings, so you do not need to reserve time for those. And they would be everything but one in special orders of business. So the public hearing on the general appropriations, water and sewer rates, tax levy, and a public meeting on drinking water state revolving fund. But would anybody like to make any comments on any other items? Yes, sir. On E1? Okay. Sure. Anybody else? Any other agenda items? All right, seeing none, we will move into item D, which is our consent agenda, and Deputy City Manager Robin Troyer.
Thank you, Mayor. Under the consent agenda, 1, approval of the City Commission meeting minutes of May 1st, 2023. Item 2, acceptance of the Parks and Recreation Board meeting minutes of April 25th, 2023. Item 3 is acceptance of the Seal and Osborne Trust Board meeting minutes of January 23rd, 2023. Item 4 is resignation of Nafez Aon from the Local Development Finance Authority. Item 5 is authorize the purchase of generic time from Michigan Municipal Employees Retirement System by Ron Thompson. Item 6 is schedule public hearing for single lot special assessment rules SL-1N-23 and SL-1W-23. Item 7, acceptance of Salmon Runway Phase 2 in Ord Street as designated public right-of-way. Item 8, scheduling a public hearing for the June 5th, 2023 City Commission meeting to consider the adoption of a resolution vacating the full width of the alley within Comptroller Subdivision Number 2, Block 1, and the RN Adams Addition Block 1 with retention of the utility easements. Item 9 is consideration of Smart Zone lease agreement with Revive Integrative Health. Item 10 is consideration of user fee correction for excavation in the right-of-way. And item 11 is approval of the consent agenda items as presented.
Thank you, Deputy City Manager Troyer. Does any commissioner like any item further explained or removed for individual consideration? Commissioner Miller.
Can the city manager explain to me number 9 better? Sorry.
So this is a lease agreement for office space at the Smart Zone The business is Revive Integrative Health. The lease agreement is for 6 months. The rates are established by the commission fee schedule. We've been bringing these to the commission the last few months just as a approval for each individual lease agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Chapman. Your Honor,
Yes, sir.
can I have that removed, please? I'd like to make a motion to have that removed until I have more information on it.
Remove for individual consideration, is that what you're looking for, or?
Correct, Your Honor.
So Commissioner, go ahead.
Is there any other questions you have pertaining to it?
I'm sorry, Mr. Manager, I just don't know much about it, and I'd like to investigate a little bit more before I vote for it or against it.
Okay.
So Commissioner, if we remove it from the consent agenda, typically we'd put it into the normal agenda for a vote, so.
Tonight or
Right,
another
Tonight.
meeting? Tonight?
Yeah,
Okay.
unless there's another course of action you'd like to propose.
I just want some more information, that's all. Nothing else.
Any other questions on the consent agenda? Commissioner Bauer.
So moved, we approve tonight's consent agenda with the temporary exception of item number 9.
Support.
It's been moved and supported to approve the consent agenda, removing on item number 9. All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Consent agenda did pass.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Moving on into item E, which is special orders of business. Number 1, turn it over to City Manager Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Up next for commission consideration is kind of the final step in our budgeting process for this year. Before the commission are 4 different items on the agenda. We have the administrative message, which was written by Director Collins, Deputy Manager Troyer, and Assistant Treasurer Perrin. We have 3 other resolutions. 1 resolution to approve the general appropriations for 23-24 fiscal year. Public hearing and final consideration of water and sewer rates for 23-24, and public hearing and final resolution on establishing 2023 tax levies for the city of Sault Ste. Marie. Going back to the first item is the administrative message, which is a summary of the budget that is presented to the commission this year. High level overall, the budget has been completed and presented to the commission. It's balanced. It continues to provide the essential services that we have typically provided throughout the community. There are some significant investments through capital for next year. $3.1 million in capital expenditures for next year, $430,000 of it coming from the general fund. A lot of these upgrades are facilities, equipment, utility improvements. The bulk of them are actually utility improvements. But in general, the message here has some key performance indicators or some information about the pension systems, utility consumption for water and sewer. As you can see in there, there's a little bit of decline. We have some tax bill information as well as our overall tax millage comparison and water and sewer rate comparison to other communities. So this will kind of kick it off. Again, it's just a summary of the budget for the commission and the public. And then the bulk of the work remaining on the budget will work in, or come out in the next 3 motions.
Thank you, City Manager, and I think we'll go to Mr. Wilks, who wanted to make some comments on this item.
Before Mr. Wilks proceeds, I have a question in regards to
Placement of number 9.
D9, yeah, placement.
Yeah.
Where is that now under
I'm assuming it'd be a business item.
business items?
I would assume it would go under business items, yes.
Okay, so we'll
Okay,
place it under
thank you.
business items number 3.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Wilks. Appreciate it. If you could state your name and
Yeah,
residence for the record.
Matt Wilkes. So I was taking a look at the budget message on page 7. There's a paragraph that I kind of wanted to bring up and just ask a question or an inquiry of the commission. It says 2022 millages for the city of Sault Ste. Marie are comparable to other cities in Michigan of similar size population, although each city has a unique set of services and financial challenge. A significant and long-term issue for the taxpayers is the ratio of taxable parcels as compared to tax exempt, including governmentally owned. Most tax exempt entities provide value services, but this ratio is the largest contributor to Sault Ste. Marie's relatively high property tax burden as compared to other northern Michigan cities. So my question is, has the commission or the city discussed or employed or actively involved in improving that ratio of taxable parcels to governmental parcels? And in particular, some of the most valuable property in the city is on the waterfront, which has a large percentage of federal and city-owned property. So I'm just wondering if the commission is having any discussions or has had any discussions about how to improve that ratio to change the taxable to non-taxable parcels.
Thank you very much. City Manager, I don't know if you have any comments at all on that.
I do,
particular
just
item.
kind of in general, all the governmental properties, not all the governmental properties are owned by the city of Sault Ste. Marie. So when we're saying governmental properties that aren't taxed, we're talking the city, the county, the school district, the tribe, the federal government, the state of Michigan, a whole slew of them. So Bonnie, if you want to throw up this map really quick on the screen, we have in our GIS system all the properties that are government, or I think it's just tax exempt, but for the most part, it's government. So you can see you have your federal government, state, county, tribal, miscellaneous, railroad, some other things like that. So I think in total, it's roughly 48 to 49% of the total acreage within the city. You can see the city is kind of in blue, and we do have some properties that are significant, the airport, some other park areas, and the commission has had some conversations about offloading the properties that the city owns, but we can only encourage other governmental entities not to continue to take on other properties, but we don't necessarily have direct control or say over that, but that's kind of what that means. So it's just a little bit of clarity. It's not just the city as a government entity, it's all governmental entities within there. And again, it's federal government, tribe, state, school district, county, all of them. University, I forgot about LSSU.
This is a great question, and it's a challenge that we as a community face. And I think just to add on to City Manager's comments, some of the non-city parcels, we work with the U.S. Corps of Engineers, who doesn't pay us directly, but they've done a lot of projects as far as helping with our CSO and providing some financing for some of the other CSO work. Of course, the tribe gives us 2% money so that we can help maintain our roadways and try to help improve some of the roadways, and they're a great partner. The tribe also does pay a payment in lieu of taxes on downtown buildings to help us to sustain and maintain some of the payments that we have downtown. As far as Lake Superior State University, I think several years ago, I don't remember what the formula is called for the fire protection and so on. We lobbied hard with our state legislators, and they did increase some of the money that they gave to municipalities for, basically giving them fire and police protection. And those are some of the ways that, you can be a little bit more creative. They're not going to pay property taxes, obviously, but, there are ways to work with the federal, state partners to try to get some assistance from them. So I can't think of anything else, but
Not off the top of my head.
okay. Good question, though. Thank you. Yep. So commissioners, any questions or comments on the budget message itself? Certainly, I'd like to thank Finance Director Collins, Deputy City Manager Troyer, and who else did you say assisted?
Deputy Treasurer Perrin.
Deputy Treasurer Perrin for all of their hard work, not only with the budget process, which is intense, but also I'd like to see that budget message come back. I think Commissioner Bauer probably has seen that before, maybe the rest of us. It might be new, but there's a lot of very, very good information in there. It really does explain, breaks down the process, it breaks down kind of the city, and as Mr. Wilks said, it explains some of the shortfalls that we have, and it shows you, you know, taxes, property taxes certainly are the largest pot of money, but it's not 100% as stable as we would like it to be, so. But I think, all in all, as I said at the last meeting, I'd just like to say that great job on the budget itself. It's a 2-year budget. We were able to maintain the fund balance and the ratios that we have self-imposed. And it's very important because whenever we go out for bonding, Standard & Poor's looks through all our policies, they look through our budgets, and they look through our performance, and then they rate us, and then we pay bonds based on what that rating is. And I don't remember our rating, it was a AA positive, I believe it was, last time they rated us, or was it stable? It was good, though. And that's a testament to the good financial management that we have had, City of Sault Ste. Marie, and continue to have. And certainly this process is something that they look at very closely. And again, we're able to also provide all our services and provide $3.1 million in capital projects and equipment for this year. So great job by everybody, and thank you very much. So let me get back into the... So for this one, we have no motion, correct?
Correct.
All right, so, item E, special orders of business, we'll move right into it. City Manager Chapman, number 2.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Up next for commission consideration is a request to approve the final resolution for the general appropriations for the 2023-2024 fiscal year, which is detailed in the attachments included in your item. This item does have a public hearing first, so we'd ask for the mayor to open the public hearing, take in comments, close it, and then move to approve the final resolution as presented.
Thank you, City Manager. So we will go right into the public hearing. So we will open the public hearing on the final resolution of the general appropriations for the 2023-2024 fiscal year. Does anybody in the audience have any comments, questions at this time? Sure, if you come to the microphone, please, and state your name and residence, city or township for the record.
I'm Nancy Steinhaus, Sioux citizen, former member and chair of the HDC, the Historical Development Commission, and member and former president of Chippewa County Historical Society, the CCHS. I was on the joint city CCHS committee regarding the sale proceeds of the Moran painting and establishment of the Osborne Trust and HDC back in 2002, 2003. Regarding the proposed budget, this year's fiscal coming up, Department 804, the historic homes, is what I'd like to talk about. My understanding is that the $26,000 that is shown as planned for that line item to come in full from the Osborne Trust Fund, the interest. I believe you call it the Osborne Trust Operating Fund, but anyway, it's the interest part. The manner in which the decision appears to have been made without the expenditure first being reviewed by the HDC and recommended by them for funding through the Osborne Trust does not follow the city's ordinance reinstating the HDC and its directives for that committee, which dates back to 2002. There has been a great turnover, obviously you all know that, in the city staff and city commission members since 2002. I'm among several historically minded other people in the city and community who have shown and expressed concerns that some of the present staff and the commission may not know the background and intent behind the creation of the Osborne Trust and the HDC, It's an interesting history, but there is special intent there, and it was written into the documents. It may help going forward to have a workshop-type training or something similar for relevant city staff and commissioners to address the possibility of knowledge not known, since you might not have been here in 2000, going forward. The original intent of the reinstated HDC is slowly being eroded. The manner in which the 23-24 budget proposed for the Water Street Historic Homes, with funds to come from the Osborne Trust, was determined without HDC input. My understanding is, that is my understanding, shows that. This cannot continue. The HDC is part of the city's ordinances. Doing so would basically make the HDC irrelevant in providing the input the city ordinance outlines as its duties, which were tied to the Osborne Trust, created by the city, by a citywide vote in 2002. And that was a city charter, I guess they call it, but it was by a citywide vote. The proposed budget for the historic homes for this coming fiscal year is not being contested by me tonight. It's in there, I understand it's going to stay in there most likely, but the determination of how it was funded without input from the HDC did not follow the city regulations and should not be repeated next year or the following year or any other year, which I believe it was sort of done last year, and we're concerned, me and others, I'm speaking for myself here, but I'm aware of others, that a precedent doesn't get started, that it will continue to run according to the ordinance and the intent of the Osborne Trust and the HDC. I thank you, Commissioners.
Thank you very much, Nancy. Appreciate your comments. Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to make any comments at this time? Okay, we will now close the public hearing and move to City Commission. Any commissioners have any questions or comments? Commissioner Miller.
I think Nancy, sorry, calling you by your first name, Nancy. I think she really gave us all the information that we need. Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. Very nice.
Thanks, Commissioner. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Sure, Commissioner Abusta.
Yeah, it's, just wondering, City Manager Chapman, if you could comment on the historical or the historical home budget there, and if it was properly allocated through the trust.
So from what I understand, there was a conversation with the HDC during the budget process. I believe there was also a couple of capital projects that had some funding contributions being requested that would be split up between half general fund and half Osborne Trust. As the budget is a recommendation moving forward, and cuts had to be made, the contributions from a general fund to fund those projects were cut in order to balance it with a recommendation to come, the remaining of the funding to come from the Osborne Trust. So that was something that was discussed and then had to be cut and then presented to the commission during our budget workshops. I think to a certain extent, we still have to go back to Osborne Trust and make those recommendations. I'm not quite sure, but that's kind of how we balanced them out. So there was conversations about them. I don't sit on that particular committee. Tracy Layton down in engineering does, but those conversations were had, but through the budget process, they were cut.
Thank you. Just to follow up then, if the Osborne Trust comes back and does not approve funding for that, is it still possible to proceed with the budget and then have a budget amendment if that happened, or is it better to adjust the budget at this time?
We could do a budget amendment.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, City Manager. Anybody else have any questions or comments? I might be blending things together, pardon my ignorance, but did we not have a discussion about this at a former city commission meeting too, and we had said that we were going to go forward and look at the Osborne Trust?
Correct.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure. All right, Commissioner Busta, would you like to make this motion?
Sure. Motion to adopt the final resolution of the general appropriations for the 2023-2024 fiscal year with details by fund as provided in the resolution.
Support.
It has been moved and supported. Any questions or comments? All in favor of this motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Motion passed on a 5-1 vote. E, special orders of business, number 3, City Manager Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Excuse me. Up next for commission consideration is a request for a final vote on the water and sewer rates. This item does have a public hearing that must be held before it, so we look for a public hearing and then final consideration by the commission. Overall, the sewer and water rates are expected to increase, or being proposed to increase by 2.22%, based on using 5,000 gallons per month. With this increase, we're able to meet all of our fixed costs and ensure funding for our capital projects moving forward. One thing that does kind of play into this is the decrease in usage from year over year. In your budget message, there was a chart that shows the usage decline for the last several years there. So there is an increase, and it's about 2.2% for those using 5,000 or more. And we would look for a motion to approve the resolution as presented.
Thank you, City Manager. So we will now open a public hearing on the final resolution of the water and sewer rates for the 2023-2024 fiscal year. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to make any comments at this time? Again, it's a public hearing for the water and sewer rates for 2023-2024. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Any questions or comments from the commission? Commissioner Miller.
Thank you, Your Honor. Last year when we discussed this issue, I was told that water rates may go down a little bit because of some of the extra businesses that are in town, and why are we going up 2.whatever%?
I don't recall ever saying water rates would ever go down. That's, to be honest, that's something that's been beaten out of my vocabulary. I just don't think utility rates ever really serve to go down. So I'm not quite sure where that comes from. But again, the decline in overall usage mixed with increase in expenditures like our fixed costs, and then planning for capital projects is where the 2.2 is coming from.
I remember having a conversation with you about equipment now in people's homes, like low-flow washers and low-flow type stuff, whatever.
Right.
And you said to me that the less water you use, the higher it goes, right? That's what you said to me.
The cost, yes.
The cost, yeah.
Yes.
So if you're using less water, it goes up, correct?
Not on an individual user basis. So I'm not quite sure what angle you're taking at, but overall, our enterprise funds for sewer and water have fixed costs. So our staff members, the equipment, the chemicals we have to use, all that stuff. So if we continue to see an overall decline in usage throughout the community, then yes, even if we kept everything status quo, didn't do any projects, just kept the bare bones, you could still see an increase in your sewer rates just based on that usage dropping.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager. Thank you. Thank you, Your Honor.
Thanks, Commissioner. Anybody else have any questions? Commissioner Marble, would you like to make the motion on water and sewer?
Motion to adopt the resolution of water and sewer rates for the 2023-2024 fiscal year with detailed rates as provided in the resolution.
Support.
Has been moved and supported. Any questions or comments? Sorry, Commissioner Bauer.
Yeah, just one comment, and of course, nobody likes to see utility rates go up ever, but it is still going up at a rate that is lower than the rate of inflation. So, all things considered, you know, I hate to say it, you know, there's a little bit of a silver lining there, but I'm just saying that it's not, you know, it's not as bad as a lot of other things. So, I mean, they're bound to go up. The only, you know, the thing is, I can't remember who said it, but this was years ago, that in situations like this, especially when you have inflation and prices of things like chemicals and everything are going up, things that we need to do to run the city water system, you know, to keep the rates the same only benefits people who are going to be leaving the city within the next year, because down the road everybody's going to have to pay for that. Was it? Do you remember? Was it St. Ignace? It was either St. Ignace or Mackinac City that held off on raising their rates, and then all of a sudden they had to jack it like 50%. You remember that?
There are a few communities around that had
Yeah.
some problems because they didn't have the political will to do what's necessary to keep the
Right.
fund
I mean,
going.
you have to do it.
You have to do it, unfortunately. It's a good point, Commissioner, appreciate it. And, you know, with inflation of over 8%, cost of goods has gone up and the cost of providing services has gone up. And thankfully, the increase is only 2.2%. So it has been moved and supported. Any other questions or comments? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
No.
Motion did pass on a 5-1 vote. Thank you very much. Under E, special orders of business, we'll move on to number 4, City Manager Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Up next for commission consideration is approval of the final resolution regarding the tax levies for the city. In the resolution, the tax levies are set for 16.728 mils for the charter operations. The millage for solid waste collection stays at 0.6520 mils. And then the police and fire pension sees a slight increase up to 6.2518 mils. So this needs a public hearing before final consideration, but we would look for a motion to approve the resolution as presented.
Thank you, City Manager. So we will open the public hearing on the final resolution for purposes of establishing the 2023 tax levy for the City of Sault Ste. Marie. Is there anybody in the audience that would like to make any comments at this time? Public hearing for the 2023 tax levy for the City of Sault Ste. Marie. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing for the 2023 tax levy. Any questions or comments from the commission? Commissioner Rubenstein, would you like to make this motion?
Motion to adopt the included final resolution for purposes of establishing a 2023 tax levy, maintaining the millage for charter operations at 16.7298 mils, maintaining the millage for solid waste collection at 0.6520 mils, and slightly increasing the millage for the police fire pension fund at 6.2518 mils to meet actuarial requirements for the police fire pension fund.
Support.
It has been moved and supported. Any questions or comments? All in favor of the motion? Oh, sorry, Commissioner Miller.
In the motion, it says, and slightly increasing the millage for the police and fire pension fund. What does that mean, slightly? What's
City
slightly?
Manager.
Last year's, Jared Collins, do you have it offhand?
It went from 6 to 185.
Thank you.
Answer your question?
Yes.
All right. Sure. Any other questions or comments? Has been moved and supported. All in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion did pass unanimously. Item E, which is special orders of business, number 5, City Manager Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Up next for commission consideration is a request for a Drinking Water State Revolving Fund project planning document and approval of its submission to Eagle. So tonight we have a presentation. Jennifer Morris from OHM will be walking the commission through the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund and some of the projects that we've identified. This is a similar process and program that we went through on the sewer side of it. This is on just the drinking water side of it. There was a program through the Michigan Municipal League Foundation that paid for consultants to come to the communities and do all the work, whereas last time we had to pay for it up front. So OHM was contracted to work with us. They put together the project plan, working with the staff. Tonight, we're going to ask for approval of the project planning documents. This, again, does not tie us to any specific projects. This is just our ticket into the door to see if there's any funding opportunities through Eagle, through the State Revolving Loan Fund Program. There are still some conversations about potential loans with debt forgiveness. We're not sure if we would necessarily qualify on the drinking water side of it, but again, it doesn't tie us into anything. So just like on the sewer side of it, we approve the planning documents today. We submit them to Eagle. They review them. They come back with any funding that we may be eligible for. We work with the commission to identify what those scopes of those projects are, and then we make a final determination that way. So, Bonnie, if you want to throw my computer up on the screen, and I will try to make this work for Jennifer.
Okay. Let me know when you are ready, and I will share my screen.
All right, take it away.
Okay. Share my screen. All right. Can you see it?
No, we cannot. Yes, we
You
can.
cannot.
It was my fault.
Okay. Okay. Not a problem. All right. Great. Well, thank you very much, Brian, and good evening, commissioners. My name is Jennifer Morris. As Brian had indicated, I am with OHM Advisors, and my job tonight is to run through the project planning document with you at a relatively high level, but identifying a number of key points. I will skip over those that Brian went through so that we can actually get into the meat of the document. So I will just start scrolling through here. Oh, you're not going to allow me once I do a screen share. It doesn't allow me to do that. Okay, so I'm not going to run through this, but this is just our agenda, and these are the main components of the project planning document that I believe each of you have seen. So the fund overview, Brian did go through a good bit of this, and you are obviously familiar since you've gone through the SRF process before. But the key component is actually in the bottom portion here, in that this application will put you in line for some combination thereof of a low interest loan and a grant. The exact percent of the combination wouldn't be determined until August, and we also don't even know how much Eagle would offer as far as the max percentage of a project being in the grant category. So that will be to come. Statement of need. This is a key component of the project planning document and why these projects have risen to the top of the list as they have. So looking at your system, decreased system reliability is a key component as to why one of these projects would be added to the list. Aging water main infrastructure, history of main breaks, and then obviously protection of your water supply, which is the sole source for that is the St. Mary's intake. And then, as I'm sure all of you are aware, 2018, State of Michigan adopted the lead and copper rule, which does require that all municipalities or water suppliers remove any lead or galvanized service lines previously connected to lead from their system. And that's actually something that you're able to take advantage of through the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund project. Also mentioned by Brian is that you did take advantage of the grant so that this is being paid for solely by the Michigan Municipal League Foundation or My Water Navigator. And as I said, this sets you up for low interest financing or loan forgiveness. Going into some of the specifics, you do have a relatively old water main infrastructure, some dating back to pre-1900s. 30% of your water mains are over 90 years old. And a key component here, something to remember, is that the useful life of a ductile iron water main is approximately 50 years. So, when you factor that in, you do definitely have an old system. And then going into the history of water main breaks, I can't say that your numbers are higher than most other communities of your size. But 75 is definitely a significant number when you look at the dating back to 2018. And a lot of this has to do with the age of your system. It can become unreliable. Some of your mains are undersized. So the whole point of this is to increase the transmission capacity and create more consistency with your water supply system. Protection of the water supply infrastructure. As I mentioned previously, you do have the solitary intake in the St. Mary's River, and that is definitely a very old system. Excuse me. Constructed in 1905, so nearly 120 years old, and there is no redundancy in your system. It is the sole source. Now, I do know that you have this inspected every year, and it's still in decent condition. However, there is evidence of degradation from just the river currents, which is not surprising, and then prior anchor strikes. So that would be the reason for inclusion of that type of a project into this plan. And then once again, going back to the lead and copper rule, required to replace all lead service lines and any galvanized service lines that are or were attached to a lead service line. The city has identified 137 galvanized lines, and those are included in this project plan. Going into the recommended improvements. Some of the key factors that serve as the basis for identifying the proposed projects, water main that is not functioning optimally due to, one factor being frequent breakage, water main age, surpass the end of their useful life, undersized, and then infrastructure that is critical to maintaining reliable water supply. Oh, there we go. Okay, sorry about that. And obviously that would be the St. Mary's intake. That is, definitely, uh-oh. Okay, not sure what's going on here. Hopefully this doesn't continue. I apologize. Uh-oh. All right, come on. Technology is wonderful when it works. So we did look at your overall water distribution system, and I realize this is probably very difficult to see, but it is in the plan. And so we identified the key components of the system and just kind of looked at how everything was functioning as a whole, and did identify that you have, or determine that you have over 81 miles of water transmission and distribution mains, which is a pretty significant system for a community of your size. Oh boy. All right. The rules for a DWSRF is that we have to look at a variety of alternatives. One of those alternatives is no action. And we had to break that out for the water main versus the water supply intake. And, obviously this is something that you could certainly consider. However, it doesn't fix any of your O&M issues, your operating and maintenance issues. It leaves you vulnerable for pressure loss and contamination, and it could ultimately result in more main breaks, with a similar issue being the case for the water supply intake. We also had to look at regional connections and just operational optimization. I'll spit that one out. And these also would not assist with breaks or service line replacements, even if they were an option for you. Additional alternatives that we looked at, and these are exclusively installation methods when it comes to the water mains. So an open cut installation, directional drill, a pipe bursting, or then the lining, which was looked at for the bridge crossings. And then when it comes to the water supply, either replacing the system or actually protecting it with armor stone. Then getting into the fairly lengthy list of projects. These were identified in your capital improvements plan, and your staff worked with us to provide all the details of each of these projects. So here are the list of the water main replacement projects. These are not complete streets, they are portions thereof. And they were included on the list for some of the reasons that were mentioned previously. They've had main breaks. They're undersized. There are, a variety of reasons, but these are the 10 water main replacement projects. And as you can see in the map, they are scattered throughout the city. So I won't go through them individually, but at the end, if there are questions, we can certainly go through them. And then we have 4 lining projects. These are, the lining projects were included and noted as such because they are crossings. That's always the easiest. And as long as you're able to do that and not have to replace the pipe as a whole, it certainly is a more economical option as well. And then the other projects, I've talked about before, the St. Mary's water intake structure, and then the replacement of the 137 galvanized, previously connected to lead lines. Then the specifics, the not so fun part, but the money. So anticipated project costs and user costs. This is a comparison of the options that we considered for each one of these. The state actually requires that you may have one preferred approach for installation, but you have to always consider a second one. And their preference is that you always choose the lesser cost, but there are always exceptions for that, whether going through a wetland area where you would always want to have a directional drill, for example. But in each one of these, and you'll see the ones that are highlighted in yellow are actually the ones that were the selected alternative. And in each one of these, they end up being the lower option, which is actually a good thing when you're submitting the project plan to the state, because that is definitely their preference. So we go through each one of these. These are still the comparison of the water main replacement projects. Then we get into the lining projects for the crossings. And then our very last item here, there is no alternative for the lead or galvanized line replacement. So as a result, it is just one cost. And you will see the big difference between the for the raw water intake, the epoxy lining versus the the directional drilling installation. And actually, this is the armor versus a new line is actually what option alternative 2 would be. That's why there's the considerable price difference. Then this chart, what I want to say about this is that this is worst case scenario. So I definitely want to make sure that is clear for everyone, that this assumes that you are using 100% loan funds to pay for each of these chosen alternatives. And then the next column is the estimated annual cost per REU. So residential equivalency unit. This is how you are billing your customers. And then because you bill on a monthly basis, we then broke it out to that monthly cost. So this would be in addition to existing rates. Once again, worst case scenario. This does not factor in any grants. It does not factor in that there might be principal forgiveness. And this also assumes a 2.75% interest rate. Excuse me. Continuation of the same, once again, the chosen alternatives broken out. And here are the totals. So it's a considerable sum, but based upon how you bill, I can say that this annual number is certainly on the lower side of what we've seen, which is a good thing. And then this would be the increase on a monthly basis. Then getting into the environmental impacts mitigation and benefits of the project. Since I'm sure most of you have been through other similar projects, most of these items should not come as a surprise. But the first thing I do want to go over the environmental impacts, because we have to do a full evaluation. While it's at a higher level at this stage in the process, we still have to look at any environmental impacts. So we did determine rather, that there would be no impact to sensitive species. None were anticipated, and that the means of installation that were selected were done so to avoid impacts to wetlands, waterways, floodplains, and contaminants. Also, the impact during construction, like I said, these are pretty typical: moderate traffic disruption, noise, dust, all would be certainly something that would be expected. Short-term periods where residents may have to avoid using any water. And then any mitigation would be typical, once again, traffic control, typical work hours, so that it's not impacting anyone after work, soil erosion, sedimentation, and then any surface restoration that would be needed. Finally, benefits of the DWSRF projects and submission of this project plan. The projects themselves would increase the reliability and functionality of your system, increase the useful life of the infrastructure, obviously comply with the 2018 lead and copper rule. And then, certainly something that you always want to consider is addressing needs before they become an issue, which ultimately becomes a cost savings. So that is my presentation. Do you have any questions for me? And I do want to comment, I do know, and it is properly included in the agenda, that this is not a public hearing. However, the state does require that we consider any comments from the public. So I did just want to mention that. So I will turn it back over to you.
Thank you, Jennifer. I guess just before, do we want to ask questions of the public or questions of the commission?
Says here that we go to I guess it's not called a public hearing, but why don't we go to the
Questions
public?
from the public?
Yeah. So we will open what do we want to call it?
Questions from the public.
Questions from the public. Public hearing on the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund Project Planning Document for the Water System Upgrades. Is anybody in the audience that has any questions on this project, potential project? Sure, if you'd please come to the podium and state your name and residence for the record, please.
Nancy Steinhaus, 306 Armory, here in the Sioux.
Thank you, Nancy.
Just a quick question. When
I'm
she
sorry, I could not hear that. Could you repeat that?
Here, we'll get it, Jennifer, and I'll re-ask
Okay.
her question for you.
Okay, all right, great.
Okay. My question is, the CSO project, where they tore up the street, did the sewer line, I guess. So my question is that whole same thing going to happen, or are they talking about water lines from the street to the houses? That's basically the question.
Thank you.
I'm not sure specifically what CSO project you may be referencing. I think during some of the CSO work.
Didn't they call the CSO project the water sewer line separation a few years back? The whole city was done?
Right.
Yeah.
What, are you talking about a specific neighborhood, Nancy, or the entire project?
No, I just said where we live because I thought you needed that. But, I mean, it was done throughout the city.
Yeah.
We were, where we're at downtown here, we were one of the last sections, but it was done really wildly across. And so my question was, they tore the street down to low levels. Not that it's a problem, but just, are we redoing what we just did?
Right. I've got, Jennifer, I'm gonna have Dave come up and take that question.
Okay, all right, and I will stop sharing unless we have any questions where we need to go back to that.
Okay.
Okay, so most of the projects that we picked weren't ever part of any of the CSO projects. They're separate projects, so they're in areas that we haven't been to yet. So,
Perfect.
okay.
Thank you, sir.
And on the chart, Dave, weren't some of the places not open cut, but some of them were different technologies that you're looking at, so? Or no?
Yeah, we're trying to, I mean, the way it is right now, we're trying to find the most economical way we can, so some of them will open cut, but,
Some of the epoxy linings are
epoxy
not a
linings
full
we're
open
looking
cut.
at, those are good right now, and directional boring with HDPE, so.
And if I could add to that,
Sure.
if there are additional technologies that become available in the future, even just within the next few years, because this project would go out to 2028, you can certainly amend the plan if there's something that maybe would work better, that has a better price point. So while these are, we've only looked at a few options for these projects, it doesn't mean that you can't consider others going forward.
Perfect.
Thank you very much. Good question, Nancy, thank you. Anybody else in the audience? Sure. If you come forward and state your name and residence for the record, please.
Matt Wilkes, 316 Armory. I might have missed this on the chart, but there was a cost per year and a cost per month, about $300. How many years was that going to run?
Great question.
Did you hear it?
20 years.
20 years.
20 years, okay, thank you.
Thanks, Matt. Anybody else in the audience? And I think the city engineer had a sign-in sheet. Did you hit everybody else, Dave, that needs to be on it?
Everybody but the commission.
You got our number. All right, is there anybody else in the audience that has any questions or comments? Seeing none, we'll close the public comment period and go to the commission. So, commissioners, any questions or comments? Commissioner Miller?
Thank you, Your Honor. Could we put it back up on the screen, the very last page that was there? I had a question about the very last page. Sorry. Your
Okay,
Honor.
Sure.
I will put it back.
Questions and answers?
You talking this,
there you go.
this one?
Why don't you take us
Was
from
that-
the very bottom and just work backwards?
No, I think that's it right there for me. It's
Oh.
Nope, now
Oh.
you lost it.
Number 27.
That one?
Yep. Address needs
Okay.
before they become issues equals cost savings. So how does that affect us right now? Coming out of a pandemic, how does that affect us right now? Like if we go a little bit longer, do you think those costs will come down or?
Well, for example, the St. Mary's intake. Right now, you could actually utilize the less expensive option because the intake is in a condition where it is salvageable. If it were to, degrade to such an extent that it's no longer viable to actually use that approach, then you would actually have to spend a considerable amount of money to replace that intake. It's a 2 million versus a 5 million. And when you factor that into the cost for your users, that can definitely have a significant impact.
Thank you very much. Answers my question. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks, Commissioner. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Commissioner Busta?
Yeah, you mentioned the project grant that Eagle has yet to determine the max percentage. Do we have any estimates based upon previous years or other communities of what typically is grant funded?
It varies year by year, so I could not say It really all depends. I mean, right now, the fortunate thing is that there's a considerable amount of federal money that is coming into the states. So it's a great opportunity to try and take advantage of this, but I couldn't tell you what the percentage is going to be and what the ratio would be between, loan and grant. We'll know come August, and then, you would have the ability at that time to decide whether you wanted to accept or not.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Thanks, Commissioner. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Commissioner Miller, would you like to make the motion? It's number 2 on recommended action.
Oh, sure, thank you, Your Honor. Motion to approve the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund Project Planning Document for the water system upgrades pending funding.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any questions or comments? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Have
Jennifer.
a great evening.
Thanks, Jennifer.
Appreciate it.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Under item F, communications, number 1, City Manager Chapman.
All righty, I'm just getting my computer back here. Speaking of water. An expensive department it is. Up next is a presentation from Water Director Kirk Tews regarding our annual Consumer Confidence Report. Included in the item is a copy of the Consumer Confidence Report, which is posted on the city's website, made available at the library, various other little stops throughout the city. And this year includes a wonderful coloring book that if your kids would like to fill it out, Kirk will decorate the walls of the water plant with it. So I will turn it over to Kirk and he will walk you through the Consumer Confidence Report.
Good evening, Kirk.
Evening. Thank you, Mayor, Commissioners. So, the water quality report, this is one thing that is required by all water systems in the United States by the EPA. It's an annual water quality report. Basically, it's our report card. Kind of goes over some of the testing that we do, where your water comes from, and things like that. So we'll go through this quick presentation. I'll do a quick scan of our CCR, and if you guys have questions, we'll answer them then. So CCR provides need-to-know information, as I said, where the water comes from, such as aquifer, lakes, rivers, or other sources. Ours is surface water, St. Mary's River, up by Sherman Park. Contains the list of regulated contaminants that we detect each year that we test for. Every year we get a monitoring schedule. We test those contaminants and report them to you all. Any potential health effects, that list has been growing for the last few years with the lead and copper change in 2018. PFAS comes up. We're fortunate enough that we don't have to worry about arsenic because we're not a groundwater system, we're a surface water, so those things are in there. Nitrates, nitrites, again, groundwater, not surface water. Contaminant levels in the CCR compared to national standards, and if there's any health violations. There's a water quality data table that has a bunch of acronyms. Of course, we all love acronyms in our world, so you will see things like MCLGs and MRDLGs and MCLs and TTs and MRDLs and things like that. So we'll go over those one by one when we get to that point in time. This is our data table. These are those regulatory contaminants that we test for. They're in a nice table. This isn't our table, but just an example. And that's where some of these things come in, all the acronyms. Of course, the acronyms are also in the CCR so that if you ever get lost, you can quickly review them. Why don't you get a print copy of the CCR? Past years, they were mailed out to everybody. The rules have changed. They allow us to publish the CCR on the city's webpage as long as it has a direct link. The direct link is down below. We also have to require things such as public meetings. We also provide those in public spaces such as City Hall, the Chippewa County Health Department, and the Bayless Public Library. Copies can also be directly sent to you upon request. Just call our utility billing office and request a copy. Questions or concerns on the CCR, of course, you can always call the EPA Safe Water Hotline. You can contact your healthcare provider if you have any questions about medical concerns over contamination. And you can contact me at the water treatment facility. I'll be happy to answer any of your questions. So here is our CCR for the year. And again, so we're pleased to present this year's annual drinking water quality report. We've been treating water here since the 1880s, so it's a long time. We have a good history of it. No major concerns, no major issues. Bottom line, it's our pleasure to report in 2022, as the past years, the water delivered from our water treatment facility has met or surpassed all federal and state standards for quality. We had lots of discussion on this in our previous presentation, that our source water comes from the St. Mary's River. We have the one intake up there at Sherman Park. We have a water treatment facility that's a direct filtration opposed to conventional filtration or membrane filtration plant. Basically, we don't do a whole lot to the water. Our source water is very clean. We add a few chemicals to take out turbidity, and then we filter it and send it to your home. So here's our water quality data table. So we do add fluoride. We monitor for turbidity. We monitor for microbial contaminants. We had no violations last year in any of that. Big thing here, this is our PFAS. Just want to point out that the level detected says under 2. That is not anything that is, some people get concerned with that, but it's basically that the test of the concentrations resulted below the lab's test lowest reportable value. We do not test for PFAS. I have to send it out. There's only 16 labs in the United States that test for PFAS, so we send those out. So basically, the detection limit of those labs was less than 2. It doesn't mean that there's any PFAS in your water. It just means that there's not any significant determination that there was or wasn't. Another big one that we monitored for is lead and copper. We had some good ranges this year, from 0 to 690 parts per billion. The 690 parts per billion was caused by a galvanized service line that we found as part of this testing. So that's why we drive away with getting those galvanized service lines replaced. We have no true known lead services out there, but we do have a lot of galvanized services, and that's what we have here. We have 5,234 active service lines. Of those, currently 1,055 are unknown, and 4,039 of those are known composition. Next year, we have to turn that data into the state of Michigan. We are supposed to know what all of our service lines are composed of. We did add some history of the Sault Ste. Marie drinking water. Like I say, we have a proud and long history in this town, so some of the history was included with this CCR. We also included our water treatment process in our CCR, just so people can take a look at what we're doing out there at Sherman Park. And as Brian says, we do have our lovely coloring book provided by the EPA. There's 7 pages there to color your heart's content out, and if you would like to send those out to the water plant, like I say, I have lots of wall space. I'll hang them up proudly. Any questions?
Any questions for Kirk? Thank you very much, Kirk. We certainly appreciate it, and it's pretty amazing when you look back at the slide from the previous presentation. I know that the plant is an amazing place. We all get to have the privilege of touring it when we become commissioners, and seeing the cleanliness and how the water is treated. But also when you think about the rest of the infrastructure, the 81 miles of water transmission, 4 elevated storage tanks that water all goes through there and retains its purity, and you test it at different areas. It's really pretty amazing when you think about it. So thank you very much for everything you do.
Thank you.
Any questions or comments from the commission? All right, so seeing no action necessary on that item. We will move on into item G, which is business items. Start with number 1, City Manager Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just real quick, so is the closed session one gonna be number 2 or number 3 now?
Number 3, so I would go back to the item that was pulled from the consent agenda and start there.
Yeah,
Put that as number 1?
yeah.
Okay. We're, so the item that you had us remove from the consent agenda, we're putting into G, business items, number 1. So
All right.
we'll do that now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Up first for commission consideration, from a request to pull the consent item number 9 off of the consent list is a lease agreement between the city and Revive Integrative Health for office workspace at the Smart Zone. This is part of our process since taking over the Smart Zone. We've been bringing all the leases to the commission for authorization. We've been doing this since January, February-ish. This is probably a number 4 or 5 that we've done in that time period. The lease agreements are typically for about a 6-month period. Included in the lease agreement are various services that are typically offered through the Smart Zone, not necessarily at our cost, but they could be through programs through different state agencies, a variety of different funding programs. Included in the lease agreement is also insurance requirements for the tenant to protect the city from any issues that may come up. Again, the fee structure is based off the commission adopted fee schedule, based on their space, if they have 1 or 2 offices, or a portion of the big garage type of area. So we look for a motion to approve the lease agreement as presented.
Thank you, City Manager. Any questions or comments? Commissioner Miller.
Mr. Chapman, thank you very much for the information. I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thanks, Commissioner. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Commissioner Bauer?
So moved that we accept that lease agreement as presented.
Support.
It's been moved and supported. Any questions or comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Thank you. Now we'll move into item G, business items number 2, City Manager Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Up next for commission consideration is a request for professional services and a budget amendment for a contract with Coleman Engineering related to the M129 Water and Drainage Project. In short, the city has lost a staff member in our engineering department. He's recently taken another job on the west side of the UP. In order to administer certain MDOT projects, including this one, the city has to provide staff that are trained and certified in various MDOT-related software and processes. We have 3 staff members that are certified. Engineer Boyle and project specialist Leighton are both certified, but given the size and scope of projects that we have going on right now, they don't exactly have the time to do it. This is a contract with Coleman Engineering to provide those services for us. The contract amount is $13,000. We'd look for a motion to authorize the contract and a motion to amend the project budget with an increase of $13,000 to be funded from the gaming fund.
Thank you very much, City Manager. Any questions or comments for the City Manager? Commissioner Miller.
Thank you, Your Honor. So there were bids for this? Were there bids taken out for this, or?
There were not any bids for this one. This was a professional service, and given the short timeline that we had on this one, we've got to get this moving ASAP.
Thank you, Mr. City Manager.
It's my understanding Coleman was already on the job, and it's
Correct.
a natural progression, and for professional services, we are not required to get bids.
So there's no bids?
Correct.
Correct. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Commissioner Habusta.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. City Manager, you mentioned us being without a staff person at this time. How does that, is there a way to reflect that in the budget? Clearly, well, there's an additional expense with this. We have savings based upon not having that staff person here. Is there a way to reconcile that at all within the budget? Does that make any sense?
It does.
I think without getting into the mechanics of staffing, that's probably a difficult question to answer
Yeah,
at
I
this
mean,
point.
in general, that would be a tough thing to do, because you never know when staff is gonna come or go. Yeah, I would say no.
All right, thank you very much.
Any other questions or comments on this item? Commissioner Rubenstein, would you like to make a motion?
Motion to authorize the contract with Coleman Engineering Company for city oversight of the utilities as part of the MDOT M129 project.
Support.
Been moved and supported. Any questions or comments? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Absolutely not.
Okay, motion passed, 5-1. Thank you. So, moving,
Second motion.
oh, I'm sorry. Second motion, Commissioner Rubenstein.
Motion to amend the project budget with an increase of $13,000 to be funded from the GAIN fund.
Is there support?
Support.
Has been moved and supported. Any questions or comments? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion passed unanimously. Thank you very much. Under G, business items, number 3, City Manager Chapman.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. At this time, would request that the commission enter a closed session according to the State Open Meetings Act to discuss the purchase or lease of real property.
Thank you, City Manager. So, we have a request to move into closed session. Does somebody like to make that motion? Commissioner Miller?
Sure. Thank you, Your Honor. Motion to enter into closed session in accordance with Section 8-D of the State of Michigan Open Meetings Act to consider purchase of a lease or real property up to the time an option to purchase or lease of that property is obtained.
It has been motioned. Is there support?
Support.
Has been moved and supported that we move into closed session. Any questions or comments? Sure, Commissioner Miller.
I made the motion, Your Honor, but are we coming back from closed session, or there,
Yes.
I see there's a few more things after closed session?
Correct. We will
Don't we
move-
normally go into closed session and then, like, we're done?
If we, yeah, we may have further work to do in the meeting, so,
Thank you, Your Honor.
thank you. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? So we will be moving into closed session now, and we will reconvene from closed session when we are done. So you're welcome to stick around. We will move into the back room. Thank you.
Stick around, they're leaving.
All right, thank you very much. We will reconvene this session. Now we will move into item J, which is city manager announcements and updates. City Manager Chapman.
I have nothing tonight, Mr.
All right.
Mayor.
So we'll go to item K, which is matters presented by the public. Is there anybody in the public that would like to make any comments at this time? Seeing none, we'll move into item L, matters presented by the City Commission. Commissioners? Sure, Commissioner Rubenstein.
City Manager Chapman, is it just possible to get an update on two things? One, the Adopt-A-Park. I know there was some notes in the minutes for this meeting, but just an update, any hiccups that are being run into. And then also just for the public, in relation to the ball fields. I heard from the public a little bit, just some of the dugouts being flooded and what the typical schedule is to make sure things are up and running. I know we had a lot of rain leading up to that, but I just think it would be good to get that out in the public.
Is Tyler still here? Tyler is still here. I don't know how much we're ready to kind of give the answers. I guess on the ball field side of it, the ball fields are tough for us because that whole area is kind of a wet, saturated, swampy mess. And once the snow goes away, you still have a lot of the water that persists there. And our mowers, if we were to take the mowers up there too soon, we would leave tracks everywhere. We'd do a lot more damage than being able to maintain them.
We were just finally able to get mowers on some of the fields last Friday. So we're starting, and we do have a part-time ball field seasonal personnel that started also Monday to start working in the area.
I think the concern there was more around the water that was in the dugouts, not necessarily the fields themselves.
Do you know what dugout that was? I'm trying to think of what even
There was a
dugouts.
couple of them. I can't remember off the top of my head.
All right, well, I mean, we'll have a staff member take a look at them and see if there's anything we can do with them, but we'll take a look at it. And then the Adopt-A-Park thing, I think we'll follow up with you guys on that one, because I'm not 100% sure either.
Thank you.
Wait. Oh, go ahead, Commissioner Habusta. I was gonna ask City Manager, while Tyler was here, if we could get an update on leaf pickup, compost. And I don't know if he's the appropriate one for citywide cleanup.
Citywide cleanup is this weekend, I believe,
Correct.
right?
Saturday.
That's right. Saturday from, what time is it? 8 to noon, yes. Pick up bags and gloves at the farmer's market.
City Commissioners will meet at 7:30 at Frank's for breakfast, and we will clean up our section of the roadway that we always do.
Correct.
By Eureka.
So leaf pickup, we started that today also. We've got the big leafer going out into neighborhoods where we know there are piles. And the customer service reps, when they take calls, they're getting us addresses when people are calling. So we're gonna do that through the end of the month. And then compost hours, we're starting that this Wednesday. So watch Facebook and the city website for the updated schedule and a list of updated rules.
So roughly, do you have a path that people can get to the compost site?
So that's,
It's
yeah.
kind of a maze down there.
The legal route to get there is coming from, you can take Spruce Street and then Barbo to get over to Easter Day. Or come in from Portage, you can still come down Ord to Easter Day. That's the only legal means of access. Accessing the Easter Day from Seymour Street should not be done. Cutting through the backside of the DPW complex is not for the public.
I didn't do it.
Had a couple close calls.
I thought about it, but I didn't.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tyler. Commissioner Robusta.
Yes, I just want to recognize two individuals from our community, class of 2023 Sioux Area High School graduates, or soon-to-be graduates, Kylie Jones and Krista Morse, this past Tuesday, signed to serve our country with the United States Air Force at a ceremony at Sioux Area High School. So I wanted to congratulate both of those young ladies, thank them in advance for their service, and let them know that they have a community behind them, supporting them, and behind them in these future endeavors serving our country.
Very good point. And would you like to give a little shout out to your own family member?
I do. I would love to. My son graduated basic training. That's why I wasn't here at our last meeting. So I've been through this process that these parents are going to go through. So good luck not talking to your kid for a few months and having them stationed across the world pretty soon. So fun times.
All right, thank him for his service. Anybody else have any, Commissioner Miller?
I just hit the microphone. Commissioner Abusta, thank you for your son's service. I want to say that first of all. Mr. City Manager, I told you I was going to stay on you about this, but how are we doing at the Polar? The concession stand, like, where are we?
Tyler is currently working with, he's working on putting an RFP out for the work. So a lot of that work's gonna need engineering, design, and drawing, and it's not civil engineering stuff that Mr. Boyle could do if he had the time. That has to be a mechanical engineer or, I lost Tyler, mechanical engineer or HVAC specialist. So there's some engineering work that has to do. They're working on the RFP, they'll get that out, we'll get somebody in, they'll be able to do that project, and then the concession will be done.
Does the fire chief, Ed Miller, have to sign off on that when it's done?
There would be some inspections, I would imagine, from a fire code perspective, so yes.
So your role in it, it's just the end of it, just to inspect it, right? You're not involved with the process right now, right?
Not right now, but through the permit process, we would be part of it with the fire department. But the fire chief does work on it from a fire code perspective. I mean, if there are issues with the hood or whatever the case may be, I mean, the fire chief is still involved on it from that standpoint. So like right now, there's code compliance issues, and a lot of the correspondences that the Eagles get / the city gets comes from our fire chief.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, chief.
Thank you very much. Anybody else? Commissioner Bauer?
Your Honor, I move that we adjourn this meeting.
Support.
Moved and supported, we adjourn this